Season 13 has completely revamped the entire ranked system in Apex Legends. In this video, I'm laying out 5 of my best tips that I've learned from playing for the first week and from all of my experience grinding ranked in the previous seasons. Now, there seems to be some misconceptions about how people should be playing this season, so I'm going to break it all down and get you all set up for success for your ranked grind on Stormpoint in Season 13. Real quick though, I have to say, all 5 of these tips are equally important. If you and your team lack on 1 or even 2 of these tips, don't expect to rank up, at least not in an efficient manner. Ranked is now emulating a lot more competitive aspects, whereas last season it was much different. So let's get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1, drop safe. Now when it comes to dropping in, I think this is where the majority of players screw up. They're generally aloof to their surroundings, and this is something that is so simple, but so commonly overlooked. Now map awareness is key here, there's no two ways around it, but ultimately players need to stop dropping extremely hot. So in this context specifically, dropping hot is basically dropping anywhere on this map with more than one team. The Stormpoint is the biggest map, with 18 named POIs, but there is plenty of other areas where they act almost as the same as a named POI. So it's incredibly easy to drop uncontested. I do understand with such a big map, it can be tough to reach certain areas of the map with different flight paths each game. However, this video won't reach every single Apex player, so regardless of what rank you're in or where you're headed to, there will always be players making dumb drops. It's up to you and your team to outsmart them here. So I recommend either dropping uncontested or 50-50ing one team. This simply means landing at one POI with another team, but you've got to make sure it's a POI where it's favorable for you and your teammates to secure a weapon before you start an engagement. Never want to chance it when it comes to landing right next to another enemy that you're going to get the gun and they don't. The stakes are too high this season. You must be observant in the dropship as to where teams are going and not going, so I recommend looking behind you before you launch. Make a drop decision based off of that info. Remain flexible and free look when you are launching to see if and where specifically that team who is contesting you is going. Share that info to one another when you are dropping. I see one team with us, but there's 2 teams over in that area next to us. This could give context on a potential third party. And also, don't rely on your teammates to be 100% correct with this info. I suggest everyone on the team share this info as you are flying. People can miss things or be wrong, and that's why if there's 3 of you looking, sharing all of that info, it's a higher probability that you guys will be 100% correct on what's going down when you're landing. Now, if you land uncontested, be mindful of where the ring is pulling, and be aware of potential areas you would like to play in that circle. Obviously, having a recon legend to scan a survey beacon is always a great idea. You get to know the next ring knowledge, but you also get to become more familiar with the reoccurring zones that you'll be seeing on Stormpoint. Now, if you land uncontested, don't fret about finding kills. They will happen organically, I promise you. But I will deep dive into the kill point multiplier in tip number 3. Tip number 2, team composition is more important than ever. This season is competitive, as I've been mentioning, so start to become more aware of who is good in a competitive environment. I mean, sure, if you want to play someone like Mirage in Bronze, go for it, but eventually him and other legends are just not going to cut it as you rank up. You want to be understanding of what competitive situations are like and who has the most useful abilities in those specific moments. I did recently make a tier list, but I will still give you some of my insight into who I would be running this season and why. Valkyrie feels almost mandatory these days. Her whole kit is just super strong, but it all centers around her ultimate, which will help you and your team make some of those bigger rotations. Stormpoint also has a lot of verticality to it, so this pairs well with a mobile redeploy for her entire team. Second, I would be running a recon legend, someone like Seer or Bloodhound. You could potentially go Crypto, but I find Crypto to be a bit weaker on this map, so I would roll with Bloodhound or Seer. Third legend should have some more flexibility, someone like Gibraltar, Newcastle, Caustic, or another mobile legend like Wraith, Ashe, or Horizon. However, if you're going to use 2 mobility legends, I would personally recommend one of the fortified legends as my third over one of the recon legends. Now obviously mixing up comps is doable. This is a pretty fun and interesting thing to experiment with in a game like Apex. Some legends play off of one another better. We see this often in the competitive scene. For example, North American teams wouldn't ever have had a Wattson on their team, at least not in the past 6 seasons, but we saw many teams in Asia swear by it. Off-meta picks emerge, but I'm not too confident in them actually making a huge difference. Great players can make a bad legend look good, but when the lobby is filled with other great players, it becomes much harder to pull off. Also, I think one thing players will really have to understand as this season plays out is that when you see a lot of the same or similar legends in your rank, it's for good reason. And one of the most important reasons is that legends can usually equalize themselves on a different team. In other words, picture you're in an endgame scenario with 7 other teams, and all of those teams have a Gibraltar or a Newcastle, but your team has a Mirage or a Loba or something strange. Your team will most likely be an easier kill in those situations because you don't have a bubble or a shield to put up. The same thing goes for Bloodhound or Seer. If your team's location is being constantly revealed in a fight, but your team is left stuck trying to use straight up game sense and communication, well, eventually it will catch up to you. Those recon teams will find an edge. So having one of the same legends on your team usually equalizes it to your opposing team who has that same legend. Oh, you scanned us. Well, now I scan you back. Now we both have info. Let's see how this plays out. Whereas if they just keep scanning us and we don't know what angles they're actually working, because we're playing in a building and it's tough to get an angle or whatever the situation is, it can get really tricky to deal with. Before I move on to the 3 other tips, I want to let you all in on a new feature YouTube added called Super Thanks. If you appreciate all the time and effort that goes into making these videos and you want to help further support my channel, you can now send a tip and get your comment highlighted below. This is by no means necessary, but I do think it's a cool new addition that YouTube added, and I just wanted to let you guys know about it. All right, tip number 3 is going to be centered around how you need to go about finding kill points. I've seen a lot of people complaining about having 4 or 5 kill points, but no RP. And that's because they're still in like 17th place. This system is focused on you winning or getting as close to winning as you can. The dev who made these changes recently tweeted this out, and I think it brings some more clarity to how the kill points are actually calculated. He said, I've been seeing players ask, how is kill RP calculated? The simple explanation is the first 3 kills are approximately 100%. The next 3 are approximately 80%. And anything after that is approximately 20%. The game maximizes gains by assigning highest worth the most valuable kills. The ordering does not matter. Now, it took me like 4 or 5 times of reading this to understand what he actually meant, but essentially, you really only need 6 KP, give or take, to max out. Of course, there's some variables on the rank of the players you kill and what percentage of those points are team KP or not, but you just gotta start trying to play for the win without trying to fight every team in the lobby. At times, this will be tough because your team may want to rotate and play for placement, whereas some enemy team may try to force a fight on you. You gotta realize if it's a fight you have to take, or if it's a fight you want to take. Be cautious, yet confident. Another aspect that Apex added that I really like about these changes is the team KP multiplier. Now, let's say your teammates get a couple kills and you weren't there, you were late, or the guys they shot you just never had line of sight on. Well, you'll still get some KP for that. It's a fraction of your normal kill or assist, but it's still something. So this is going to help share the fights that you guys do take. And the huge reason behind adding team KP is trying to incentivize teams to not fight everyone. Because if they were trying to not do this, they would have never added team KP. Because think about it, how many times in the previous seasons have your teammates had KP but you have not? Or you have had KP but your teammates have not? And this creates an imbalance between the team because one of you may be like, hey, let's just play for endgame, whereas the others may be like, but dude, I need kill points. So adding team KP is a great thing. Tip number 4, communication is key. There's so many little things that come along with communicating that can make huge differences in your games. Now you have to be communicating whether you're solo or not. Apex has too many variables to not be filling in your teammates on the info you're seeing, doing, etc. Sure, pings are great and they tell part of a story, but they rarely tell the whole thing. Especially when you reach the rank that you're going to plateau in. You can get by not communicating in a rank you don't truly belong in, but that is because the competition isn't up to your skill level. But once you reach the rank that will truly make or break you, you're going to have to communicate with your teammates. Now, I know, lots of you are going to be solo queuing, and communication with randoms can be stupid. There's a lot of toxic people out there, which sucks. And I know the players on console, half of the players on your team will be in a party chat, and the communication just becomes invalid. However, I believe that the minority of the player base is toxic, not the majority. And I need to give you a couple tips on communication skills for Apex Legends. The first is you have to be preemptive with your comms. Most players will talk some crap when they get knocked, or when they do get knocked, that's when they become the most talkative, and this is a huge no-no. The second is those serious moments that you'll get in, you cannot be clouding them out with unnecessary comms. Keep it on track to what's going on and what your team is trying to do. I cannot emphasize this enough. When everyone on your team is on the same page, things will always feel easier, smoother, and you will usually win your fights. As someone who's coached Apex for the past 2 years, I can confidently say communication is the most overlooked aspect in Apex, and it's the quickest thing players can learn to improve at. Tip number 5, do not solo queue this ranked season. I mean, if you want to try to stay sane and see success, I would try to find some teammates. It's pretty bad this season. Well, it's not like solo queuing has ever been good if we're being real, but the game is way more focused in this competitive nature, as I've been saying. So having teammates that can't pull their weight or are just straight up throwing away your RP is not going to be as forgiving as it was in the past. Yes, Team KP can help with all this, but we all know how rough the matchmaking is for solo queue players in ranked. With that said, I wouldn't bank on it being a good time. So if you just play casually and enjoy ranked, I strongly recommend finding teammates. Apex brought out a competitive nature in me that I hadn't really experienced in a while. When you have an organized team in synchronicity with one another in a competitive game, it feels great. On the flip side though, when you don't have that, but feel like the competition against you does, it feels terrible. Join my Discord, the link is in the description below, or look for other platforms to find teammates. You've got to be persistent, and even if you have a good game with a random, try inviting them. I'm telling you guys, having a teammate that's got your back and you've got theirs will go a long way in Season 13. Now, real quickly though, before you go, they may make some changes to make it easier on solo or duo queue players, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Apex wants this to be a team game at its core. It's heavily apparent, from their reluctance to add a solo game mode to their matchmaking favoring players who queue up together. I know pros have been making their voices heard saying solos and duos should have less of a buy-in during ranked matches. And although I agree with this, I could see Apex saying, well, we don't want to promote players going at ranked alone by incentivizing them with a lower buy-in. On the flip side, the system how it is could alienate enough of the player base to not even play. So it's a tricky situation for Respawn to navigate. However, to the casuals who feel like the rank changes are too much, Respawn is not in the business of trying to kill their game. So if data shows lower ranked engagement, they would eventually budge and change it again. With Apex reaching the highest concurrent player count at the launch of Season 13, more will be revealed. If you're interested in 20 things you must know regarding all of the changes for Season 13, I suggest you click on this video here. Peace.